windows and turn off the lights.
Welcome to Michael Myers Minute, where we delve into the 1978 horror classic Halloween 1 minute at a time. I'm your host, Robert Black. Minute 45 begins with Lester's legs going limp, a stinger fading out. We are outside the Wallace house. As I mentioned in minute 44, this is the dog trainer, as Michael, holding the dog. Its legs dangle naturally and they just slowed down the footage to make it look like it's dying. From the script, finally the dog's legs stop moving and dangle lifelessly. The shape moves away from the house, which we don't actually see that last part. What we do get is a nice creepy moment, a little heavy breathing, some crickets. And then second 5, we cut to RKO fanfare music. But before we get to what we're looking at here, we have a guest, Harper Harris of The Thing Minute. Welcome, Harper.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now, this TV is not the TV in the room in this movie. I just want to note that, because there's no way with the wall as dark as it is around it, it's the TV they keep showing us.
Yeah, that's true.
But this is also John Carpenter's personal 1-inch video copy of The Thing from Another World. So, playing, the TV's probably at like Carpenter's house or somewhere convenient.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. I wondered where they shot it. I was wondering how they hooked it up, because like, I looked up, I'd never really heard of a 1-inch tape, videotape.
Old.
Yeah,
like
and I've never actually, because he talks about it on the commentary, and I thought maybe he was talking about beta tape or something, but yeah, it's like reel-to-reel style tape.
Yeah, beta would be smaller than VHS. Yeah. This is bigger.
So I don't even know how you'd hook that to a TV. I'm curious now. I want to know.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know anyone who has those. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. But I do love that. I love that this was his personal TV and his copy of the movie, because that's so like, this movie is super exciting as a huge John Carpenter fan, just because it's so early in his career, and so it's like it feels very polished now because we've all seen it a million times and it's such a classic. But looking at it in the light of like he's such a young filmmaker, this is really kind of his big break. And so, yeah, I mean, like, this is his TV. Like, he's just like, hey, I like this movie. Let's put this on.
Yeah, aside from Donald Pleasance, John Carpenter, he's the oldest person on the set, but he's only 30 when he makes this.
Wow, I didn't realize he was the oldest person on the set. That's really interesting.
And there's a bunch of, like, filmmakers and filmmaker wannabes who'd, like, barely out of college.
Yeah. So. Well, and then so many of these guys, this is the movie, not just John Carpenter, but so many people on the crew, this movie made their careers. Yeah.
Especially because John Carpenter and Deborah Hill had a tendency to bring the same people back and have their whole entourage of film people. Yeah,
it was interesting in doing The Thing, especially during like the credits minutes. When I was kind of researching names that popped up, it was really interesting to see how many people came from Halloween 2 for whatever reason. So that for, a lot of the folks from this movie obviously carried over into different John Carpenter movies as well. But it seemed like the majority of like kind of the basic crew, some of the lower crew guys, Grips and stuff like that, came from Halloween 2. So it seems like that's when he kind of, even though he didn't direct it, that's the movie that he kind of solidified his like core crew, which is kind of strange.
It also would have been when they had a bigger crew.
Right.
Like Halloween has a very small crew. Tommy Lee Wallace is credited, I think, with 3 roles and really was doing like 6.
Right.
As to what he was doing for the movie. But yeah, I noticed when I watched The Thing again just a couple nights ago, and it's the same cameraman. And, a bunch of the names in the credits, I'm like, oh, I know that name. I know that.
I know, it's funny, especially doing these minute podcasts. Like, I recognize the weirdest villain. I'm like, oh, Ray Stella, that camera operator. I know him.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a picture of him.
Yeah.
Or I listened to Wilder Ride. They're doing Young Frankenstein. They keep talking about, what's his name, Arthur Macklin? Now I'm forgetting his first name. He's the graveyard keeper in this movie.
Oh, man.
And so when I got to describe him, I'm like, hey, I recognize that name. They were just talking about it.
So funny.
So yeah, it's like all these little details you pay more attention to in this format. Sometimes it's annoying. As listeners will know, a few minutes ago, I was very obsessed about Tommy's costume in this movie. And spent hours trying to figure out what it was.
I was going to ask you. I want to know what you figured out, because that was a question I had in my notes. Is what the hell is he? He's some kind of astronaut, right?
Okay, I can tell you. In previous minutes, I couldn't yet. Now that minute would have happened. Listeners would hear it. He's wearing a belt from Space 1999, which people have known for years. Like that,
Okay.
It's really clear and obvious. His outfit, though, the tag on his right breast says astronaut.
Yeah.
The one on the left is a patch that, as far as I know, doesn't exist.
What does it say? Or what is it?
It doesn't say anything. It's got a picture like a red planet, maybe Mars,
Yeah.
and a thing landing on it. It looks similar to, I forget which Mars patch it is, I said a few minutes ago. It looks similar to, but distinctly different. It's missing something in this air, I think, and it has no words around it.
Interesting.
And then a U.S. flag. So it's clearly an astronaut costume.
Yeah. I mean, all astronauts wear a patch that says astronaut, just in case you couldn't tell.
Well,
But...
then you can tell it's a cheap astronaut costume.
Right.
It's something basic.
It's like when you get the Batman costume that has a picture of Batman on the front, not the Batman logo.
Right. So I ended up, I'll cut the story short because I've already told this to the listeners.
Yeah.
I ended up looking up old like JCPenney catalogs and Sears catalogs from 77, like their Christmas catalogs, and 78, and looking at what kind of costumes they have. This wasn't in there. And then my mom used to like make costumes and make clothes for us because she had a lot of kids. And so I started looking up old like patterns, and I found a Simplicity is the company pattern that had an astronaut costume that looks like this one. The patches, I still can't quite figure out where they come from. But the costume's the same, the neck's the same. And I think in this minute we get a glimpse of it. His costume has a helmet.
Oh, does it really?
It has a cloth helmet that is sitting on the far arm of the couch, and you can barely see it. He never has it on, but it is sitting there. And when I noticed that, I'm like, I found it. It's the costume. Like, I've figured it out. But that was several hours over 2 or 3 nights of just looking through old catalogs online, like whatever I could find.
Oh, yes. I did I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what, I can't remember the name of the magazine now, but it's like a movie entertainment magazine that Windows is reading in the thing. I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out which issue it was and what he might have been reading about. And it was very difficult to find. So I feel your pain. Yeah.
So yeah, this format makes for that. And so it can be fun. It can be annoying, but when you find it, it's good.
Yeah.
So we get the RKO Radio Picture logo, the Winchester Pictures Corporation logo, and apparently Thing from Another World is one of only 2 films that used it.
Yeah. That was Hawks. I was trying to look it up because it looks like Winchester is it like an imprint of RKO?
Yeah, it was Howard Hawks' production company.
Okay.
And it was Winchester is Howard Hawks' middle name.
Yeah. And
then the title card comes in, The Thing. And so this is 1951's The Thing from Another World, based on the 1938 novella Who Goes There by I forget which one's his fake name and which one's his real name. John W. Campbell writing as Don A. Stewart. That was okay.
Yeah, that's right.
It had 2 names on it. I'm like, which one's which? And John Carpenter, of course, is Harper would know. Remake it in 1982.
Yeah, and it's I should point out very loosely based on that short story.
Actually, I thought parts of the Thing, 1982, were closer to some of the story than
definitely
the older movie, obviously, because they couldn't do the shape-changing thing or any of that. They just had this weird plant-looking guy.
Right.
Because they couldn't do it. But plot-wise, it's like the 1982 version happens just like the new remake, reboot, whatever you want to call the one from a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The 1982 version happens right after the Thing. Like it's right after the plot that was part of the story. Except then takes the character names from the original novella anyway.
Yeah, I was really surprised at how closely John Carpenter's The Thing follows the novella, that was written in the 30s. It's pretty damn close in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the original movie, Think from Another World, has very little in common with the short story aside from that there's a UFO under the ice.
Yeah.
Like, that's almost the only thing that it...
Well, it has like 40 minutes of setup before it gets to the part of the novella.
Mm-hmm.
And probably also because they had to establish their characters. They didn't have a monster to to make a big deal of, so they had to limit it.
Right.
So the structure's different. They do go together rather well, though.
Yeah, they do.
I watched The Thing from Another World, I think it was last Wednesday night, and then I watched The Thing Thursday night. And I was going to watch the newer one's just also called The Thing, right?
Yeah.
I was going to watch that the next night. I ended up being too busy.
Yeah, you could skip it.
I saw it when it came out, but I was going to watch it again to see how it connects to that story as well.
Yeah. It's I mean it's funny since there's 3 movies essentially based around the same story that the original kind of loosely takes some ideas and kind of does its own thing. John Carpenter's is pretty close, but then obviously makes it a little bit more graphic. Although the original novella has a lot of that same stuff, the blood test and a lot of that stuff is in there. And then the 2011 The Thing is really doesn't have anything to do with the novella as much as it is like, adding story on to the remake. So it's like, I'm sure listeners of your podcast will already be very used to very complicated continuities.
Yes.
I think the Halloween canon is among the most complicated. And
we have a new movie coming out that ignores all but the first.
Yep.
We already had a remake and a sequel to the remake.
Mm-hmm.
We had H20 and Resurrection, which ignored all but the first, 2?
2, I think, yeah.
Yeah, first 2. Yeah,
ever so complicated.
Because you had to keep Laurie alive.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is it gets even weirder if you read the comics, because Chaos Comics, which I haven't gotten to talk about in a while, tried to connect Halloween 6 to H20.
Really?
And
why?
Merge them in. No, I liked it. I want them to be together. I want the new one to fit too, and I'm like trying to figure out a way for it to happen. I haven't seen the new one yet, so I don't know. But I want them all to just be nice together.
It'll be. Are you a Zelda game fan?
I've only ever played the original.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say this sounds like they did a whole thing a few years ago where because the Zelda games all don't really have a continuity up until recently, but then. Like a couple years ago, they put out this book, the Hyrule Historia, where they bend over backwards to make them all fit into this one canon, and it's super complicated because they have it all depends on 3 different timelines, like whether Link survives or fails. And,
well, right, 'cause it's a video game,
right? So it's super complicated. So I imagine at some point maybe somebody will put a book out that'll do that for the Halloween movies.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the last comic they did, The First Death of Laurie Strode, never sold its 3rd issue. It never was even, I don't think it was even printed, because it just wasn't selling.
I've never even heard of those.
Yeah. There were only a few. I know 30 Years of Terror, actually, I think, sold pretty well. And it was just a bunch of, single short story comic things related to the original movie.
That's pretty interesting.
And so those were cool. But then they had some follow-up ones, and they didn't do very well.
Yeah, the Thing comics are pretty hit or miss as well. Mostly miss. They kind of suck all the life out of the amazing, incredible ending of the movie.
Yeah,
kind of hard to follow that up.
Yeah, you don't follow that. So John Carpenter liked Howard Hawks. Obviously, he has cited him in numerous interviews as an influence. And here in Halloween, Sheriff Lee Brackett is named for the screenwriter of Hawks' film Rio Bravo.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah, I know Rio Bravo is one of John Carpenter's personal favorites. When I was looking up stuff for this, I didn't realize that John Carpenter is on the commentary for Rio Bravo, which is very funny to me.
Wait, like an official commentary for it?
I think so. Yeah, I think he's cool. On the Blu-ray. So as a fan, which is just so cool. That's one of the things I love about John Carpenter is just as big as he got and as much of an idol as he is for folks like me, he's still very much like a fan of movies, and he seems like a very approachable, fun, friendly guy,
Yeah.
Like just the fact that he did a commentary for somebody else's movie is kind of awesome to me.
Yeah, I could listen to that. It's been a while since I think I watched Rio Bravo when I was doing a month of Westerns for my blog, so I saw it a few years ago. So second 35, we cut to interior Doyle House, living room, night. But before we get to Tommy's questions, we've got guest questions. Harper, are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, number 1. Have you ever murdered anyone, or do you plan to?
I plead the 5th.
This is not a court of law. I'm not sure if you're allowed to do that, but I guess it's okay. Number 2. How do you think the thing relates to Halloween? Like, thematically?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think, to me, the thing that ties nearly all of John Carpenter's movies together is a sense of perspective. So the idea that, particularly like the opening shot of Halloween, obviously when you're inside the eyes of Michael Myers, that kind of thing goes with all of his movies, I think. In particular, The Thing is all about perspective and the fact that through one person's eyes, you can never know what's happening behind somebody else's.
Right.
So, the fact that you don't know who somebody really is and you can't really 100% relate to somebody. It's like there's like this barrier of empathy between his characters and people struggling to trust each other. And I think that's definitely in play here, where like, you're kind of set up to be in the shoes of Michael Myers from the very beginning. And then obviously that's kind of turned on its head with, when Laurie kind of becomes the protagonist. So
which takes a while.
That's what I would say. Yeah, a very long while. It's really interesting, really, if you kind of look at it from that perspective, like who is your protagonist in the movie? It's not an easy. It's a harder question to answer than it would seem.
Like we're introduced to Laurie first, but for a while Annie gets more screen time.
Oh yeah,
and it focuses on her
and Dr. Loomis.
Yeah, and Dr. Loomis is clearly a protagonist of a story that's happening. We're just not quite seeing all of that story. We're getting glimpses of it here and there because he doesn't get to do, for the second half of this movie, he's not doing much. He stands around. Right,
he just kind of wanders around and
over
yells at kids and stuff. But yeah, it is interesting. I think that's one of the things that, to me, most of the sequels don't get. They kind of take the wrong lesson from that and think that, okay, so if Laurie doesn't have to be in the movie and the main protagonist 100% throughout, then we can just have it be a bunch of people and most of those people will get killed, and that's cool. But I think in this one, it's a little bit more carefully crafted. So it's not that there is no protagonist; it's that you are intended to be confused about who you're rooting for.
Yeah, with this cast, it's small enough that unlike some slasher films that would come later, it can be more obvious because it's not a dozen people that are probably all going to die except for one. We got 3. And then when Bob shows up, 4. It's a simpler version of what the slasher film would be later.
Yeah, you're right.
One thing I noticed watching The Thing this past week, and I liked as a specific sort of visual reference for me, is when the dog first is put in the pen with the other dogs, and he just sits there and stares at the wall.
Oh, it's so creepy. Because
that's the description of Michael, and that. In the movie version anyway, is that in his hospital room, he just sat and stared.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
And when he tilts his head, it's like a dog. He's similar to the Thing, and that Thing in a way, and that he can be... He's got the mask, which I've talked a few times about, like studies about anonymity and like violence.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. That's another really good thematic thing that ties these two movies together, but also a lot of Carpenter movies, is that sense of like the faceless evil. Like Michael does not have a personality really, aside from like one or two moments, like the kind of things where he like tilts his head and stuff, are like, it gives him a little bit of character, but for the most part, he's just like a force for evil. And the Thing is the same way. And I would say, the evil in Prince of Darkness or In the Mouth of Madness are very similar in that same way too. It's not a antagonist with a background that, it's like, oh, like they did in the remake of Halloween. Like that's a very different version of Michael.
Trying to explain him.
Yeah. Which is, I don't necessarily hate, but I think this is definitely in line more with Carpenter's kind of overall themes and things like that.
Yeah, I've said in the show before that I like the remake. I think it's a good movie.
Yeah,
I think it's not a good Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Because it's doing something so different that I think it would have been better served by being its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, I know those two movies catch a lot of flack, and I'm really not a fan of the second one at all, but I do think the first one is really interesting. And I think, as a big fan of Halloween, I wasn't as obsessed with it then as I am now, but like when it was coming out, I'm glad they did something very different with it. I feel like just doing a remake where it's basically the same movie, just, with a little bit more modern style there's no point to that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he did something different with it. I prefer the way Michael is approached in this one, obviously, but it's just a different way to look at it.
Yeah, and the review, I finally read a review of the new one today. I've been avoiding them mostly.
Yeah, I have
but
too.
I had a guarantee that it had no spoilers, so I'm like, okay, I'll click.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, this episode was recorded well before I saw the film and already reviewed it twice, just a few days ago. And it made it sound pretty good. Like, they're dealing with sort of what violence in one generation can do to the next and the next.
Oh, that's an
because it changes the way Lori is as a person. So she raises her daughter a certain way that affects the granddaughter. And so it sounds like it could be interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. Yeah, my thoughts about the new one are that, like, in order to kind of temper my expectations, to me, if I walk away with a good new John Carpenter score, then I am going to be perfectly happy. Even if the movie's total garbage, I'll be thrilled that there's a new John Carpenter score out there. But if the movie's great, then that's cherry on top.
Yeah. Now, the last question, or question 3, unless, if it's the obvious, we'll have to reword it, but what's your favorite horror film?
Yeah, it may be the obvious one. It is The Thing. I think tops the list. I have like a pretty solid top 5, but that one typically isn't shaken. Yeah, I put Alien and The Shining and what else is in my top 5? I think Return of the Living Dead might be in there. So yeah, I don't know if any other John Carpenter movies make my top horror movies, but he is maybe my favorite director. So I mean, Halloween is my second favorite Carpenter movie.
Yeah, he has a style where you know what to expect from him, and he doesn't overdo it like some directors would. Like Tarantino, I think, is a great director, but the more movies he made, the more I didn't like him.
Yeah, because
he has his excesses and he embraces them. I don't know if John Carpenter ever did. He almost went in the opposite direction with some of like Body Bags or some of the later things.
Yeah, well, and he's such an interesting director too, because I think from kind of a like outside perspective, it doesn't seem like John Carpenter has like a defined style. Like most people could watch a movie, one of his movies, and not really know that it's him unless, you told them, except for the fact that he puts his name in the titles of most of his movies. But you know what I mean? Like like when you watch a Tarantino movie, you can tell 100% at any given moment that it's a Tarantino movie, right? But with Carpenter, that stuff is a little bit more subtle. And I think, honestly, that actually connects well with this minute, because I think that's him trying to emulate Hawks as his hero, because, Howard Hawks did have some kind of thematic things that carried over. Like, I know Carpenter always cites like the camaraderie of men in a difficult situation is kind of the Hawks thing. And that's also a John Carpenter thing for sure. But, he tried to do, even though he's always pegged as a horror guy, and, his Twitter handle is the Horror Master, obviously, but he did not just do horror movies. His first movie is a very straight sci-fi movie, or sci-fi comedy almost.
Sci-fi comedy,
And then, something like Big Trouble in Little China and Starman are, those are movies that you wouldn't attach to the person. You wouldn't automatically assume is the same person who did something like Halloween.
Well, even some of his horror, I forgot until someone mentioned it this past week that he did Christine.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great movie.
And I didn't connect it, and I'm like, oh yeah. Like, I gotta go watch Christine again, because I forgot that was him.
He's just done so many. I mean, the Elvis
he made the
picture
Elvis
that he did before. That was right before this, right?
Think so, yeah.
Yeah,
he made it before this.
Yeah, it's kind of, his career is insane to me, and the fact that he was making this movie basically at the same time he was making Somebody's Watching Me is
he finished
insane.
That and switched to this while that was still in would have been post production, because that was going to be on TV.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Can you imagine he's essentially making two movies at the same time, kind of going back and forth, and then probably having no idea that one of them is going to become one of the most important horror movies of all time. It's crazy.
Now, I have a couple notes to double check. We're doing minute 45, which should go up October 26th. So,
nice.
We were just talking about the new film in the future tense. It came out last week.
That's right.
And it was amazing.
That's right. We loved it.
No, I am going to try to insert a review as fast as possible when it comes out. If I see it that Thursday night, I will stay up late and try to insert it for Friday. I don't know. Listeners will know by now when I put it in. But also, Halloween, the holiday, is coming up next week. And you were just talking about John Carpenter's music. Most years, I don't have plans on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I grew up without trick-or-treating because of the church I attended. And as an adult, I don't have friends that have, Halloween parties most of the time. this year I have like multiple options, and it's weird because one of them is seeing John Carpenter's like concert.
Oh, really?
He's doing his thing that night.
Oh, you have to go.
And I'm like, I have to go to that. And then Sugarmint Gallery that I talked about in a recent minute in South Pasadena has a gallery of Halloween related stuff. They're doing a screening of the original Halloween that night. I'm like, oh, I have to go.
Oh, wow.
It's I don't like having options.
Well, I will say, if you haven't seen him in concert
I haven't
before, it's absolutely, it's amazing. I got to see him last year or the year before, and it was really, really
I was hoping he had more than just the one night. I mean, seeing him on Halloween night would be awesome.
It's pretty special. Yeah.
Some other stuff I might only be able to do on Halloween night, but apparently that's his only night this tour or this go-round. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, I didn't even know he had any stateside dates. I know he's doing a big Europe tour this year, but yeah, it's funny that you say that because I'm actually going here in Atlanta. They're doing Goblin is playing a concert on Halloween, doing a live concert of the score to Suspiria, playing with the movie on Halloween. So that's where I'll be.
Nice.
So similar thing, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning toward going to the screening of the movie.
Yeah,
because of like I went to Sugarmint Gallery did a show there. When was it? A few weeks ago in recording time, and I talked about it in the show because I went there and like I talked to him about this show, and I talked to the guy who was cosplaying as Michael. But like it was a fun interaction with people that were obsessed with this sort of thing, and I think at a concert, while I enjoy it, it won't necessarily be something I can talk about after in too much detail because I don't know music. I recognize music. I like music. I don't know music. Sure. And so I'm leaning toward that, but I don't know.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to see it on the big screen before?
The original Halloween? Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Long time ago, I think. I know I saw it as a kid on one of the re-releases because I saw this movie when I was really little. Like when they were filming Halloween 2, I was 5 and I knew what was going on. I got to see them film part of it.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And so at some point in there, I'd already seen the original one and would see it many, many times since.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, yeah, I'll be curious to hear what your choice ends up being, which thing you end up going to on Halloween.
Yeah, I wish I could do both.
Yeah.
Like before I heard of either of those things, I'm like, I should just go like hang out by the hedge, and see if people do weird things there, or by the houses in Hollywood.
Yeah.
People don't get to do much by the Myers house anymore because it's fixed up and then rearranged by the train tracks. So it's a chiropractor's office.
Well, I guess in some way Michael was performing. He was a chiropractor on some of his victims, I guess. Like,
oh yeah, and Sugarmint Gallery is directly behind it, so their backyard will have a screening of the movie that night.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's one of the disadvantages of living in Atlanta versus somewhere like LA is that you guys get all these very cool location screenings. Like I had a buddy that went to I'm not sure how long ago this was, but he went to a Prince of Darkness screening in the church where they filmed it.
Nice.
Which seemed like the coolest thing ever. Like I would kill to go to that, but we don't get that here very much.
Yeah. When I was looking at like doing this movie, I'm like, I'm gonna have to go visit all of the locations. And little ways into recording, I did. I went to every location and took photos. That's even so cool. City of Industry, which is like 30 some miles away from here.
Yeah.
I drove out there. I'm like, I might as well get them all.
That's awesome. I need to do that the next time I'm in LA. It's not very often, but that's a pretty high priority for me. That'd be really cool to see.
Now, we haven't actually talked much about what's going on in the movie so far.
That's true.
So back to the minute at hand. Laurie and Tommy are sitting on the couch watching the horror-thon on TV, according to the script. Laurie twirls her hair. Tommy's candy bag has moved to the floor at the other end of the couch, mostly out of sight. Oh, and here's where I saw the helmet. Yeah. Or I guess it's the second time. Second 43, as Tommy turns toward Laurie, we can see Tommy's helmet again. It has a patch on it, just like the Simplicity 5299 pattern that I talked about in minute 41.
Yeah.
And part of the helmet also seems to be a translucent plastic, which is kind of fancy.
Fancy and or a choking hazard. I feel like that's like putting a Ziploc bag over your head. Like, hopefully it has holes.
Especially because the helmet is cloth, so that thing isn't going to stay away from your face.
Right.
It's going to be moving around.
I love this shot of the two of them on the couch, I should say.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's nice. I know in the commentary, I think it's Dean Cundy that says it's really taken advantage of the widescreen, which is funny because people always talk about widescreen and like for example, when The Hateful Eight came out, a lot of people complained that it's like, oh, he shot it in 70 millimeter. It's like super wide and it all takes place inside.
Yeah.
Like, what a waste. But this is exactly the kind of thing that he was taking advantage of with The Hateful Eight, is like you can get these super wide shots of people together, even though they're not like, right next to each other. It's just, you really get a nice kind of
it can be done well.
The two of them. And I love the lighting in the scene too, the way that they've got those like very harsh shadows cast behind them. That's supposed to be from the TV, I guess. It's just it's a very like evocative, creepy looking, it's not supposed to be like a scary moment. It definitely kind of puts you in that Halloween mood.
Yeah. Except for the kitchen where Annie is. There's a lot of harsh lighting in these two houses through the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be. So Tommy asked about the jack-o'-lantern, his comic books, and the boogeyman. It's
such a kid thing. The way he asked those questions is such an accurately childish way to ask those questions, isn't it? And I like that it seems like Laurie is really into the movie. Like he keeps asking, like, hey, what are we going to do next? Like, hey, when are we going to do this? And she's like, later, basically. Like, she's really into watching this movie, which is kind of cool.
Well, to be fair, the beginning of The Thing from Another World, there's a lot of dialogue. You got to pay attention.
That's true. That's very true. She's just a stickler. She's a shusher in a movie theater.
And a lot of characters in the beginning of that movie, too.
Oh, yeah. There's so many characters in that movie, especially compared to Carpenter's version.
Like in minute 48 of Halloween, I have more notes on that movie because they show the scene where they're doing the circle in the ice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was writing down the dialogue and I'm like, I have no idea who said that.
Oh, I know. There's so many
That guy said something. Then that guy said something. I don't know who that is.
That is one thing that's fairly accurate to the novella, I guess, is that the novella has like 40 characters.
Yeah.
Even though it's only like 45 pages long, which is insane to me.
It's
given
like
that
so many people.
Carpenter's movie is 12 people, and it feels like more than enough to tell the story.
It actually feels like a lot a couple times early in the movie when they're all together in like the same space.
Yeah, you definitely get a sense of them being kind of crowded into that small, cramped into that space.
It reminded me, it came after. It reminded me of Alien also, like the beginning of that, where like when they're at the dinner table, it feels like a bigger crowd than it is because they're just so noisy and interacting like people who have known each other for a while and been stuck together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Something
definitely.
Carpenter gets. I assume it comes from the direction because it happens in a lot of his movies where it feels like these people actually know each other.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I know
he's
got a good sense of that.
With the three main actresses here, if you look at behind the scenes photos, they deliberately went and like hung out and spent time together and took photos as like friends, even though Annie and Linda are actually almost a decade older than Laurie in real life.
I know, isn't that wild?
But the three of them like became friends and hung out, and so in the movie when they're interacting, there's timing to it and like a sense of familiarity that they feel like actual friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I know with The Thing, he did a pretty extensive not rehearsals is maybe not the right word, like table reads with all the characters many times before they started shooting, so that the actors had a chance to kind of get a sense of their interrelationships, and a lot of the kind of like conflicts between the characters in The Thing actually come from the actors that were like, hey, this makes sense that you and I, like Clark and Childs, I know, is one of them, that they decided, the two of the actors decided that they were the two biggest guys on the cast, and that because of that they might be kind of butting heads a lot because they're kind of the two tallest, strongest guys there, so they came up with that wasn't in the script. So, I think, I don't know if they did that with Halloween specifically, but that seems to be a Carpenter thing that lets the actors kind of develop those things.
I don't think they had much prep time for this as far as that went, and very little production time, but they did hang out a lot. Like the last day of shooting when they cleaned up the Myers house to film the opening sequence, it was basically the cast and crew cleaning up the place, putting furniture in and painting it.
Oh, that's funny.
As a group, having a good time.
Yeah.
And they were worked out of a Winnebago, so they were together.
That's very funny. I just not that long ago I got the book. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like maybe it's called On Set with John Carpenter.
Kim Gottlieb's book.
Yeah. And that's definitely all the behind the scenes pictures look like everybody is just having a great time, and they all really enjoy hanging out with each other. So you're definitely right about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just got to meet her at the Sugar
Really?
Gallery opening and talk to her about being a guest. I just haven't been able to schedule it with her.
Oh, that's really cool. I love those photos.
Oh, yeah. And she has great stories about the behind-the-scenes stuff. And,
I'll bet.
And I haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. She's talking about Ray Stella handed her the Panaglide.
Mm-hmm.
And she put it on, and she's like, if I hadn't continued to be a still photographer, I probably would have done that. Because she said it's like a mix between photography and ballet.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because you're like dancing with this thing attached to you and pointing it at the thing. And I'm like, that makes it sound really cool.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. That's really cool. You get to meet her. That's awesome.
So Laurie tells Tommy there's no such thing. And Tommy says, Richie said he was coming after me tonight, which is not true. Richie did not say that. In minute 17, it was Lonnie who said the boogeyman is coming. But people get the kids confused all the time. It's fine.
Yeah, so what is Tommy's motive here? Is he trying to get Richie in trouble or what?
No, the way they were taunting him from before that scene even starts, they're coming out saying weird things to him.
Yeah,
they all could have said it. And Richie, Lonnie, and Keith did say he's going to get you. So
how did they know? How did they know the boogeyman was in town?
They set it up. They were the ones. Their chanting brought him there.
Yeah, they're the real origin of the Curse of Thorn. Those kids.
Well, they do end up meeting Michael again in the comics years later.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they're all back in the Chaos comics. And they're still jerks. Second 57, Tommy looks down and says no. Because he doesn't believe everything that Richie tells him. And the angle on Laurie, she smiles, laughs, and the minute ends.
That's right.
Anything else for minute 45?
Trying to
or The Thing. Or Carpenter.
Well, I could talk about Carpenter forever, but I did like, and I don't know if you brought this up in the previous minute, but about the dog. I did like in one of the commentaries. It's I think it's Nick Castle that says it. He's like he says, in John's quest for authenticity, we actually killed a dog. Which I thought was pretty funny. They all play it very straight in the commentary.
Nice.
But I didn't know the slow motion trick for that shot until I watched this bit with commentary earlier today. That's really cool because now watching it, it seems very obvious that that's what's happening. But if you don't know that, it looks 100% legit that dog just died in his arms. You know,
well, right, and
it's
even
very effective.
Even the slow motion thing. How many times do you see someone pick up a dog?
Right.
You know, so you see its legs go limp. That's not a good thing.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was very clever. That's an early sign of John Carpenter's. He has a really smart sense of economy when shooting those kind of things. He tends to, him and Dean Cundy together especially, tend to come up with these very quick, easy solutions to what would probably be a pretty complicated problem for production to solve. Yeah,
and also a simple casting solution there. They have just put the dog trainer in the costume.
Yep, that's right.
Like whoever was there, Deborah Hill is in the costume to be a shadow, a silhouette at one point because she was there.
Right.
You know? She's the hand in the opening sequence because they needed a smaller hand.
Yeah, there's I don't know if you've gotten to this yet, but I know their list is pretty long of people who have technically played Michael Myers.
Yeah. Well, in this film alone, it's 6, I believe.
Oh, wow.
It's mostly Nick Castle. Whenever he's breaking something, it's Tommy Lee Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
It's Deborah Hill's hands and Deborah Hill when it's a silhouette by the Doyle house.
Yep.
Here's the trainer whose name I still cannot find anywhere.
Yeah, I wonder if it's this. I don't think it is the same trainer that they used in The Thing because I feel like I would have come.
But that has a trainer listed though, right?
Oh yeah, that I can't remember his name off the top
I'll look
of my
that
head.
guy up because this doesn't have one listed, so I haven't been able to figure out who it would be.
That's interesting. Yeah, it was a big deal in the Thing because he also owned the dog, Jed, who was a whole. And yeah, I did a lot of I don't know why I can't remember his name all of a sudden, but I did a lot of research on the guy because it turned out that like his dad was like the owner and trainer of Lassie.
Huh.
And so there was like a whole family of dog trainers.
All the Lassies? Because there were a lot, I think.
At least
I think that's one of those where they switch the dog like every season. And no one noticed.
Yeah, I think he was the trainer of the original, or owner and trainer of the original. I'm not sure how many of them down the road he ended up training, but yeah.
And then, what's his name? Tony Moran was him for the scene when they take his mask off.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Supposedly John Carpenter was in the mask at some point for the movie, but I've never heard anyone say when.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I know he wore a mask it's in that book, On Set with John Carpenter, the rap party.
Yeah.
3 of them had the masks on.
Oh, yeah, when they were like playing
the Coupe de Villes.
Yeah. Yeah, he does that a lot. There's a part in the thing when Carpenter is actually playing Kurt Russell's character for just one kind of B-roll shot, because they shot it before they had cast any of the main actors. So he's playing McCready, and then I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's the dog trainer and one of the producers are playing 2 of the other characters, and they just have all this winter gear on,
yeah,
so you can't really see
tell
their faces. Yeah, when they get off the helicopter to investigate the UFO, that's none of them are the actual actors. It's John Carpenter and 2 other folks.
Nice. So that is all for Minute 45. Harper, how can the listeners stalk you?
Sure. So you can check out my Minute by Minute or Movies by Minute podcast at thethingminute.com, where we went through the 1982 classic, The Thing. Just in general, I'm at Harper W. Harris on all social media and all that good stuff. And harperwharris.com will get you to my website where you can see the I do sound for film for a living, so you can see things I've worked on recently and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, if you need sound for a movie or podcast or anything like that, hit me up.
Nice. Michael Myers Minute is a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find more content at lemmingdrops.com. You can stalk me on Twitter and Facebook at Myers Minute, or Instagram is actually the one that's more fun lately, Michael Myers Minute, or join the Facebook listeners group 45 Lambkin Lane. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a nice review if you like what you hear. Until next time.
See you later. Bye. Bye. You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?